was just wondering,
Thank you, Robin.
I was thinking about Esther proclaiming a fast.
Yeah.
Did they ever do something like that afterwards?
Israel, we have fasts throughout the Jewish calendar. The Day of Atonement's a fast. They have a lot of fast. I think there's even a fast that has to do with Esther that they still do. There's a number of fasts throughout the year. I know what you mean. I don't want to call it spontaneous. There's another word. Can't think of it. But something like we would think, like we need to pray and fast now for this. I don't know of any of that. Praying, yes. They even went to the Western Wall, and a lot of the families went down there and were praying at the Western Wall. And a lot of the Jewish prayers are very beautiful. They start out with, we have sinned before you, humble yourself before God. Beautiful. When they're all singing it together, beautiful. I don't know about, I haven't heard anything about like a proclaim, and I don't even, I don't know if they do that much. I don't know if they proclaim a fast. And we don't either, really. Maybe in a church, one church, but very odd, it would be very odd for a leader in the States to, let's have a fast. Anyway. So no, I don't think, but praying definitely, and yeah.
New question over here.
Oh, where? Behind the column.
The peace process that they were doing in Saudi Arabia
Yeah.
operation, is that totally dead now, or is that any chance of revival?
Yeah, so what's funny is that pretty much every peace process, almost every peace process, was not true with the Abraham Accords. No, there was a little bit, but nothing serious. Every peace process brings some kind of war. You remember the Oslo Accords in the early 90s? Brought the Intifada. And then all of a sudden, when you had, and it separated a lot of Jews and Arabs, Palestinians. That in certain cases, Jews couldn't go anymore to buy stuff where they used to buy from the Arab. It had a lot of economic things. I've seen, I read something today that was going back to that. And even before all this was starting, Saudi Arabia was saying, yes, we want to have peace with Israel, but Israel's going to have to do something with the Palestinians. You're going to have to, and I think they were kind of pushing for a state, but they didn't say that. So now that's come again, and it's still the same kind of thing. But we're not just going to make peace with you like the Emirates did, because the Emirates don't really care about Palestinians. A lot of the Arab countries don't care. Egypt don't really like them much either. And this is historic. This isn't something now. If you remember when Yasser Arafat signed the peace treaty with was it Clinton and Yitzhak Rabin. The Mubarak was the Egyptian president, and one of those videos, because Arafat had a lot of pressure behind him to not sign. And in one of the videos, you see Mubarak come up behind him, and those that understand and can read lips, he says, "Sign it, you dog." And dog is not a nice word to call somebody in Arabic. In English, we say, "What's up, dog?" It's a different thing. But he's like, "Sign it, you mangy mutt," kind of thing. So, and also, this whole thing about the border on that what side of that? Southwestern, that's Egypt controls that border. And I don't know if some of you saw pictures of the fence that Egypt reinforced. So they're not want the.
They don't want to do it on the Sinai.
They don't want anything to do with. Yeah, exactly. They don't want to have the gospel, and that was true. That's been true from 1948 and before. They didn't want to have that responsibility because it's a mess, and everybody knows it's a mess. So it'll be interesting where that goes, because also Biden is putting some pressure on Israel about, Palestinian state. Blah,
Can I
blah,
ask
blah.
another part of a question?
Yeah.
Do you think that this is setting the stage from a religious standpoint, maybe for the future of Ezekiel 38 39 to be fulfilled? Because Russia's now involved with training them and.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, especially with eschatology, I prefer to present to you what I know and then just let everybody decide how they think that, figures in. Yeah, because people interpret that differently. Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to put down your question, but that's just how I prefer to. I don't like taking a stance on that. Plead the fifth on that one. Is there any other questions? Let me know. Okay. So this is this very expensive fence that Israel had. How did they get through it? Israel wasn't ready for like a mass attack. All this kind of stuff was kind of like your single terrorist or a small group of terrorists, which this would stop. But when you come through with a tractor and you wouldn't call it a bulldozer, right? That would be a tractor. And take it down. There's other places where it had like concrete barrier about 2-3 feet high, and they were prepared. I mean, it's amazing when you know Arab culture. A lot of times is not as organized as we are on the West, so we get kind of used to this, and we see this. And when you see what they were able to do, it's amazing. Like. It's not a bad thing to say it was a complete failure on the side of Israel, total failure. May have been some successes here and there, and almost a complete success, maybe even more than they were expecting. On some cases, they did have plans to go further than they did, but I also think that rave held them up because they're like, wow, we don't have to go very far. They brought it to us. Why did I have that here? I think this here is, I'm going to talk about that example. It was called a Nigelnik, which is like a small portable bomb shelter, kind of like an enclosed bus stop. And so a lot of times people would go in there and they hid from it. And you can see it's not very big. It's not very long on the other side. And some of these, they had like almost 30 people in them. And there's one story where the terrorists were outside and they were throwing grenades in. And one of the guys was standing, you don't have a direct line into it. It goes straight and then it turns because it's designed so that shrapnel can't fly in there. So they're throwing it, and there was a guy standing in there, was he 18, 19? And he grabbed him and threw him out. Now, it would be wonderful if he was able to grab him and throw him out and hit the terrorist, but he'd be shot. He's thrown out. He did that 11 times before, I guess they figured, hey, pull the pin, wait a second, then throw it in. And he was killed. His buddy, who was we've been fortunate enough that with October 7th massacres and the kidnappings, we're, what do you call it, like, not generation, we're like, not secondhand, what do you call that? We're like friend of a friend. So we have good friends, that their good friend's son had his arm blown off and was taken into captivity. And she's, by the way, his mother is, if you want to listen to somebody, her name's Rachel Goldberg Poland, I don't, maybe no D on the end, I don't remember. And she's just an amazing speaker, and you hear someone talk from that, and she stepped up, to speak, and when she talks, I listen. I think I put this here because there's a couple stories about these buses. That's just a little, what we call a minibus, a little minibus. There was an Arab, I'm going to talk about Palestine and Palestinian, what that means. I guess I probably need to explain this a little bit. So you have Arabs in the land, Gaza, within Israel and the West Bank. Jerusalem is actually technically in the West Bank. Identify themselves as Palestinian. You have Palestinians who are also Israeli citizens, about 2 million of them. There's also, that number is kind of, there's also 2 million, a little bit over 2 million in Gaza, and about 3 million in the West Bank. So there was a Arab-Palestinian driver from East Jerusalem, which is not, those of you remember maybe being in East Jerusalem thinking, this is maybe not the most friendly side of town to be on. So not a really Jewish or Israeli friendly place to be. But he was a bus driver, young guy, and he drove people down there. Did Hamas care? No, they shot him. Muslim guy, not Israeli. And then there are other Bedouin. You know that name? Bedouin are kind of like traditional Arabs. They used to roam the Middle East, and now with the early beginning of the 20th century, when you have the formation of states and they can't cross borders, so Israel settled them, and they were settled in other countries. And we have a number of Bedouin who are Israeli citizens. They're Arab Muslims, Israeli citizens, and they saved people. They saved Jews. A lot of them worked in the kibbutzim and the villages, and they went and saved. Sometimes they were going to get their cousin out, but they also saved Jews at the same time. And I heard this story a little bit before I left Israel about a Muslim driver. He took, I think he had about 30. He didn't have as big a bus as that one, but he said he could fit about 13. He took some kids down there to the festival, dropped them off, and then he was supposed to pick them up, at a point in time. And they called him, and they said, come get us now. And so he did. He went and he found them, picked them up, and took everybody he could on the way out, and ended up shoving like 30 people into a van that was supposed to be 13. Also Arab Muslim. Okay, enough of that.
Question about.
Yes, ma'am.
When you're talking about some of the Muslims that
Yeah.
don't, what about within the gates of Old Jerusalem?
Yeah.
And there are Muslims and
Yeah.
Israelis today? How's the relationships doing now?
It's tense. Because, as you guys know, where you get your news affects how you see the world. So a lot of them are watching Al Jazeera and all these stuff that all they do is show, these kids that have been killed in Gaza from bombings. So it's tense. I haven't. I had some of my friends from right after this happened, I had some Arab friends from my tour guide course that wrote me and said, hey, everything okay? I said, yeah, thanks for asking.
One more question.
Yeah,
Yes,
ma'am.
I got your attention. The borders.
Yes, ma'am.
Concerned. I saw the great big fencing that the tractor was.
Yeah.
doing. Where is that located? Does that go?
Around Gaza, all the way around
Goes
Gaza,
all the way around?
except on the Egyptian
Except
border,
the Egyptian.
and then that,
Is there, that's the other part of the question.
yeah.
What does Egypt do as far as the border? Do they have any soldiers there? Do they have
They
cameras?
do, but some of those soldiers are bribed by Hamas, and they have tunnels underneath, and they smoke, and that's probably how they got all that, especially that North Korean ammunition there and some of the other stuff. And those not hang gliders, what do you call them? Paraglide? No. They were basically fans, and then they had a parachute. I don't remember what they called that. But that may have been smuggled in there also. There has been times in the past when Egypt put a stop to that and flooded all those tunnels with seawater. But they don't do that all the time. And a lot of time they kind of turn the other eye, and these guys on the Egyptian are making a lot of money by having an opening of a tunnel in their house or whatever.
So could you, going back to the hostages
Yeah.
that are still hostages?
Yeah.
Is there any plans to rescue them, or that's all off?
Well, they would love to do that. That's what every Israeli soldier wants to do. There was early, they did rescue one young woman, and you'll have secular Israelis say, That was a miracle. Like, don't expect a lot of this. And it was amazing. Probably, other than the rapes and all that stuff, one of the things that really, really sad is that there were 3 guys. I got a picture. I don't want to flip through everything. We'll see them in a minute, and I'll go back to that. I don't want, because I have a picture of them, though, I think. I'll go ahead and tell the story. There were 3 guys, 2 Israelis, 1 Bedouin, like I mentioned, that worked in a kibbutz. They were taken along with some foreign workers. I think he was from Thailand. The Thai guy was released, and he told about these 3 guys. And he told that the Bedouin, the Muslim Arab that was being held in captivity with them, acted like a negotiator. And he would translate in between them. And this is, I mean, such a tragic story. Somehow these 3 guys managed to get free of their people holding them, whether they were killed in a rocket, which is kind of amazing if the people holding them captive got killed in a missile attack, but they didn't. I don't know no one knows how they got free. They wrote some stuff on signs, 3 hostages here, but at the same time, Hamas is using this against Israel and trying to trick the soldiers into going into a building that's booby-trapped. And I don't mean like, ouch, booby-trap, I stepped on a mouse-trap. I mean like, it would explode everywhere. I think I heard one time they said like 1 out of 3 buildings has explosives in it. And so a lot of times what they'll do, and this is something they do also in the West Bank, they don't want to go through the front door, so they knock a hole in the side, because then you can be pretty sure if you knock a hole in a wall, that you're not going to have a booby trap right on the other side of that wall, or it would have been knocked, you would have set the booby trap, or booby trap's a silly word. The explosion's off when you knock down the wall. But what happened with these 3 guys is that they were able to get away. They made signs. They did everything right. Only other thing I think they could have done is lie down on the ground. They took all their clothes off except for their underwear, which is, if you've seen Israel, when they take the men, when they take men in Gaza, you'll see them in underwear. And the reason they do that is to make sure they don't have explosives on them, because that's been done in the past. So they came out there in their underwear, and they said, we're Israelis, and it wasn't like you and me. It was further away, and there were people in buildings, that had gun positions in buildings, and it really takes only one person to mess up, and I didn't misidentify them, and to yell terrorist, and to open fire, and then everybody else does. So 2 were shot. One of them ran back into the building, and then they still thought they were terrorists, and when they came into the building, they shot him as well. And it's so tragic. I mean, there's almost like I can't think of something hardly any more tragic than that.
That was in the news here.
Yeah, no, that was a big story. And what they found later, Israel uses a lot of dogs to check the buildings and stuff, and they have GoPros on the dogs, but they don't always check the GoPro immediately, because it's being recorded on a card. It's not live streamed somewhere. And they could see these guys later, after they had been killed, and after they checked this video on the dog, they saw them. So maybe one of the lessons is going to be learned that when you send a dog in, have a live feed. And they've been doing they're using more technology. It makes sense, every time you do a war, you introduce more technology. There's more technology in this war than there's ever been, and there's more communication between the Air Force and the troops. And in Israel, the Army doesn't have any planes. It's real simple. Only if it flies, it's in the Air Force. If it's on the ground, it's in the Army. If it's in the water, it's in the Navy. It's not like here where there's more planes in the Navy than there are in the Air Force. So there's just better communication this time, and they can see everything much clearer with tablets and drones and that kind of stuff. But I think that's probably something that they're going to realize they have to change, is that when they send the dog in, they've got to see a live feed, and it can't be something they're going to check 2 days later. because sometimes a dog dies. And I can't remember, I think maybe even that one, I think he did die. I think that dog died because of an explosion or was shot by one of the terrorists. And so they did get it back immediately. They didn't get that footage back immediately. It was only after those 3 guys had been killed. But again, I want you to understand, one of those 3 guys was a Muslim. He was a Bedouin. This is a picture from my yard on October 7th, and those lines in the air are from rockets. We didn't have any land near us, or, well, actually, we did a little bit later, but within, I think we had 2 actually land, like one a mile in one direction and one a mile in another direction. And one of the mile in the other direction landed in an Arab village, Abu Ghosh. I don't know if you remember that when you guys were there. It's between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. And the young guy was outside and he got hit and died of his injuries a few days after that. But this is a picture of all the children. The children were released pretty early along with their parents. I think Hamas understood that this sounds stupid to say, but they went too far and it doesn't do them any good with holding kids. With that said, they're still holding the youngest, these 2. He just celebrated his year birthday, and he's now lived, so he's been like over 3 months. No, he's not a year old. There's somebody else that's a year old. Let me think about this. Because he was like 3 or 4 months when he went in, so no, he's not a year old yet. And this is his brother, and their whole family's still in Gaza. Their mother was taken with them, and I think I have a picture of her because you can see it's a hard picture. This is the other, everybody else. Remember, there were 240 at the beginning. This is a picture of the family, and this is, her holding on to her children. And then the father was also taken. But apparently, in Gaza, they were very intrigued with the color of the kid's hair. So they became like a little bit more special. And also, I think because he was the youngest, he became like if somebody thinks of the hostage, you're usually going to think of him a lot of times. So we don't know what Hamas at one point said that they had been killed, but we don't know that. There's suspicion, I think even more, that the leader of Hamas in Gaza, Hamas has other leaders that live outside of Gaza. They're billionaires, but they live in Qatar and some other places. But the leader in Gaza, they think he's maybe even surrounded himself with hostages to kind of, if Israel does find where he is. These are those 3 guys. This is the Arab guy. Yeah, Samir, Alon, and Yotam. Those are it's really sad. It's really sad I hate it for the soldiers because that's the thing they most want to do. They want to find hostages. This is the idea of what they're going for. This is 3 young women. The pictures of before they were taken and then what they looked like a couple weeks ago. So you can see they're not being treated very well. This is one of my, I don't want to say favorite stories, but this is Emily Hand. She is 9 years old. She was spending the night at a friend's house, and they took her. She lost her mother was that 2 years ago? Lost her mother of cancer a few years ago. She lives with her father. Her father was also on a response team, or at least he had a pistol. I don't know if he was on a response team. And he didn't go into his bomb shelter. He sat next to one of the windows in the house. He only had a pistol. With the pistol, like looking, but he didn't see anybody, and it's probably good that he didn't, because when you have a pistol trying to shoot at people with AK-47s, you're at a disadvantage. This picture is very touching to me because she's holding up her hostage picture, which means God took her out. She survived, And I love this because you also think of, I think of mostly in New York, where I saw that of people tearing down the signs and stuff, and I said, look at this girl and think about, tearing them down. Also, her dad, Thomas Hand, he also did a number of interviews. He's Irish, and he was told at first that she was dead, and it was a lie. I think it was a lie. No, he very, very honest. He said, I said yes when I heard she was dead, because he didn't have to think of what she was going through. And then later he said, we made a mistake. The body that we found that we thought was your daughter is actually another little girl. And we now know that your daughter is in captivity. So on one hand, you get excited again because she is alive. So she came back. If you ever hear him talk, he's just very, very honest. One of the hypocrisy, or talk about how the world is looking the Irish Prime Minister, when she was returned, tweeted something like, the Irish girl that was lost in Israel has been found. Like as if she walked into the woods by herself and got lost. Which is ridiculous. I think they offered to house, how are we doing on time? This is kind of interesting. I was listening to a military commentator, and he was talking about why he thinks Hamas did what they did. And it's something called asymmetric warfare, similar to what was done in Vietnam. And he says, when you're the weaker opponent, it's kind of like the idea of guerrilla warfare, but taken to another level. You attack softer targets. When you have fewer you take civilian casualties, and you want to do so many atrocities so that you cause the other side to attack you. And then the other side of that is that you want to influence your attacker by trying to influence, or you want to change the war, if you will, by influencing the media and the educational institutions. So it's very interesting when you think about, when you look at some of the Ivy League schools and some of the media. So the idea, I had heard this before, I understood it, but I didn't, really understand it until this war, when I actually heard leaders of Hamas say it. Because you don't really think, people say, oh, Hamas doesn't care anything about its people. And you want to think, how could that be? They got elected for the people. How could they really not care? But when you think about their strategy, is actually to make Israel kill their civilians, so that because the more civilians Israeli kills, the bigger international pressure builds up on Israel to stop fighting. This is one of here's a picture. I know what he said. I don't have to show it to you. This is one of the leaders in Hamas. He was asked, you have 500 kilometers of tunnels, which is like 500 kilometers is like 360 miles of tunnels. Some of them go down like 20 floors underground. It's crazy. Said, why don't you put the civilian population, or at least some of them, into the tunnels? He said, the tunnels are for Hamas. The UN takes care of the civilian population. They don't care. They want them to be killed so that Israel will be forced to stop. And that's what's happening. This was a kind of a sign, just to give you an idea. Population on the 7th, basically a quarter of the population, a little bit more than that. I was trying to take a break. When you have kids, you don't want them to see everything. They're going to see stuff. They're going to talk. They're going to hear you talking. They're going to hear you watching the news. But one morning, I let my daughter put something else on. So she put Angry Birds movie. You know what this movie's about? You know the birds and the pigs? The pigs are the bad ones, right? The pigs, how do they do this? This is crazy. The pigs go to the birds and throw a party for them. While the birds are at the party, the pigs steal all their eggs. Take them to their island. And then the birds have to go in and they destroy their island to get their eggs back. And I just thought, you can't escape this. Like even, I think even my daughter saw the parallels there. But I was like, I can't escape this, what's going on. This is, I had a small group land on the night of October 6th, 7th. They landed on the night of October 7th. I was to meet them in the 8th in the morning. So when they landed, I said, look, where you landed, where you're spending the night, you're safe, don't worry about it. I'll meet you in the morning, we'll talk. So I went and picked them up. They wanted to move their flight up. So they were looking around all the time. I said, look, you do that, you look for flights. In the meantime, let's go and you'll see the country, what we can. The only place we couldn't see was in the north, with the Lebanese border. And that's actually you can actually tour almost all of Israel except the Lebanese border. So those of you went, you remember Tel Dan? You remember that? Those of you went. And Banias or Caesarea Philippi, you remember seeing that? You can't go there. Because Hamas, not Hamas, Hezbollah, which is in southern Lebanon, are firing anti-tank missiles, which is a lot more dangerous than rockets and mortars. And there's no warning because they're shot on pretty much a straight line. And even in the north, they can't really warn you too much before those fall. So we went around. We saw Sea of Galilee. And then we changed our plans in Jerusalem. We did a little bit in Jerusalem to see the main stuff. And then I took them to the old city, and I have, there's a painter there that I like. And I was looking at one of his paintings, and this is, when you see these kind of houses like this is kind of a typical way to paint Jerusalem, but this one is a little bit more runny. And I said, to me, it's like Jerusalem's crying. And that was pretty emotional for me to connect with that, and they ended up getting out, and I took them to the Jordan border, and they went through Jordan and eventually got home. But I like the picture. We've talked about this already. I don't want to really show that. I don't think. It's also the numbers have changed. This is something Hamas did on the internet. They showed these 3 hostages and said, what do you think? Should we kill all of them? Should we kill one? Or should we let them all be alive? Now, this girl, Noah, I know her last name. Can't think of it right now. Argaman. To be honest, the media is attracted, and we're attracted to people who are pleasant to look at. And she's a very beautiful girl. But also she's half Japanese. Her mother's Japanese, her father is Israeli. And her mother's dying of cancer, like very terminal stages. And all the family's asking, can you let my daughter go so she can see her mother before her mother dies? But this is how sick, if you weren't convinced that Hamas was sick, that they would put something like this up. And I think at least one of these guys is dead, if not both of them. And I told, remember the little girl Emily? So there's a video, I think someone from CNN is interviewing her dad, and she's sitting next to him. Anybody see that? And she's caressing his face all the time. And so he's talking to the guy from CNN, I think it's CNN, and he said, the guy says, CNN says, do you know that we heard a couple more of the hostages were killed? He said, oh really, who? And he said one of these guys' names, and then the father just goes, oh my gosh. He actually lets out a little cry, and he says, he was with her most of the time. He was with my daughter most of the time. How's the world responded? This was something like, you see these young people protesting, sometimes they pick up a sign, they don't even know what it says. And I saw an interview with this girl, and they were like, you see what you're holding? And she tried to explain it some other way, but it's very Nazi-ish. I hate some people are very quick to call people Nazis. I don't like doing that because Nazi were a specific political party in Germany. But some of the things you see today are like, Jews are dirty and we need to get rid of them to make the world clean. And she had a different explanation for what that meant, but anyway, it's a little scary to see stuff like that. How have we been affected? Oh, this is Hirsch. This is the guy I told you who lost an arm. And this is his mother, Rachel, that I told you is friends of friends. Here they are in that little bomb shelter. This is the guy Anel who was picking up the grenades and throwing them out. But I think there were 26 people in there. Those that survived basically hid under bodies until the terrorists were gone. That's him. I wanted to show that. This guy is a brother of a good friend of my daughter's. And he was raised in a, if I say Messianic Jewish family, does that make sense? It's a Jewish family that believes in Jesus. He lost both his legs, and he had, I don't know if you can see it, he's got skin grafts on his arm, and he had some surgery done to his eyelid. I don't know how his eyelid was hurt and not his eye so much, but this is somebody that we know that my daughter knows very well. This guy's a very interesting guy. He's an Arab Christian. I'm not going to say born again Christian, but an Arab Christian in Israel who did the army. Has become very, very, even before October 7th. I saw him in person during COVID actually. Speaks about Israel all over the world. Name is Yosef Haddad, like Joseph Haddad. Very, very good speaker. This is a Christian guy his family came from Germany to Israel to work with Holocaust survivors. They build a home, like a home for Holocaust survivors, and they even had it made kosher, like according to the Jewish laws, so that if there were Holocaust survivors that kept kosher, according to the Jewish dietary laws, they could be there without a problem. And he was killed, kind of, I don't know how many of you were soldiers or been in war, but you just have crazy things. Apparently he took his helmet off to scratch his head or something, and got, just at that time, there was an explosion and he got hit in the head with shrapnel. So he didn't have a lot of hope from the beginning when he was hospitalized. That's my oldest and my second. So on that day, we went to go give blood with my oldest boyfriend and her father. So they were in the hospital giving blood. One thing that I was able to do, this is kind of a cool story. Very proud of my daughter for putting this together, but we have friends who run a ministry. This is my neighborhood. We live road down from that. But he has a youth ministry, national youth ministry, also works with soldiers, and he immediately went into war mode, I guess, and started organizing equipment being sent mostly from the States, and he was using the soldiers that he knows through the youth ministry and also through his soldier ministry, and supplying their units with different stuff. So it's a really, really good way to empower these soldiers to be able to share the love of God and maybe talk a little bit more with their friends, because you become really like brothers when you have to depend on the person next to you to save you. So what happened was my brother-in-law, who's a little bit younger than me, in Israel, you do the army for about 3 years. Maybe you ever an officer, you do a little bit more, or maybe you're doing something special, you sign on a little bit more, and then you do reserves until you're 40. There are people that volunteer after 40 to continue doing it. There's even, I think I saw something, there's a guy, he's like 80 something years old, but he's like packing, he's not with a rifle and gossip walking around. But my brother-in-law, he's 46, and he still does his training. Give you an idea of Israelis. As soon as October 7th happened, planes were full of planes coming into Israel full with Israelis trying to get back so that they can serve. So he's one of those guys, and he serves. I think his unit. There are about 6 guys that are all about the same age. And they serve together, and a lot of reservists have been let go to go home, but he's still in. He was an elite unit in his regular service, but so my daughter heard that they didn't have any mattresses. They were basically sleeping on the ground where they were. And it just so happened that this youth ministry had a lot of, either he went and bought them, or I think he had bought them already. So one Friday night, just kind of spontaneously, we went and picked up all these mattresses and drove them down to these soldiers. I'll show you some picture of the soldiers here. There are about 80 soldiers there. Obviously, they all did. This is actually taking a picture, because this was a Friday night, and some of the guys were religious, so you're not supposed to take pictures. But this is war, and somebody's bringing you a mattress, so it's a little bit different. This guy's funny. This guy, I don't know this guy, but he was like, I'm getting one of those good ones. Because there were only like 3 or 4 of them, and he's kind of a big guy, so I think he was like grabbing it. I'm going to tell you my brother-in-law's in the picture, but he's really private about showing pictures, so I'm not going to take who he is. But he's there. And then there's one here. There, I blotted out his face. So if he ever says, you show my face, he'll be like, no, man, I put a black circle on your face. So this is the daughter who organized it, and that's my youngest. And this was random. I asked my sister-in-law, I said, do you want to bring anything to him? She said, no, he's not where you're going. You won't see him. And so we were there and kind of talking, and all of a sudden my girls scream and run off to a certain section. And he had just gotten there, so it was kind of random that we ran into him. But that was good. He is having some back issues, and that was good. That's him. I figured I'd show that because he has his face covered. But you can see kind of Gaza back here in the back. And then after that, I started pretty much in the same ministry, bringing food and stuff to different soldiers, mostly reserve. In Israel, this is crazy. The guys who are doing their, what do you call Sadir, like the regular service, 3 years, they're pretty well taken care of as far as like equipment and food. But the reservists are only provided 1 meal a day. So they organize. And Israel is really one. It's hard to say something beautiful happened in this, but the volunteer spirit in Israel right now is amazing. And I'll show you something in a minute. But so a lot of people are volunteering food and making food for the soldiers, and that's what this is. This one, a soldier, he had to barely get the food in his car. And then this is actually a Jewish believer. He works when he's not in the reserves being called into war. He works in a ministry, but I've known him for several years. This is a guy who used to be. I used to be a youth worker, and he was in the youth group. He's my second daughter's. She was upset with me. You didn't tell me Amos came here. And I was like, oh, sorry, I didn't know you cared. But he came and picked up some stuff. This is a package that my wife's choir director, she wanted to send something to my brother-in-law, and I was like, or she wanted me to send something to a soldier, so I was like, well, send it and I'll make sure it gets to a soldier. But I was like, it's a little bit problematic because some of them like my brother-in-law keeps kosher, so he can't eat stuff if it doesn't have like a little K on the back of it. Some of this probably does because it's like major food stuff, but not all stuff does, but he eats anything. So that was kind of fun to be with him. This is a guy, I went with a bigger group and went to this guy's unit, and they actually led us onto the base, which was pretty cool. He's actually from Vietnamese background. And what happened was when there were refugees leaving Vietnam, the then Prime Minister Menachem Begin, if you guys remember in the 70s, late 70s, really had a soft spot for them as refugees. And so he let, I think, several thousand come in, be in Israel. So he's one of them, and he's a Christian. And he's actually very good friends with the guy who lost his legs. It's actually really hard for him. A lot of Israeli soldiers, after they get out of the army, they travel around the world. So they traveled together for a while. And so it was actually really, we had faith crisis sometimes. He had a faith crisis when his good buddy lost his legs, and it took it very hard. This is another, again, mattresses. We loaded up, picking them somewhere. This is a guy from the States who came. They brought up a bunch of equipment. And then get this. Oh wait, I should have put that one after. Okay. Anyway, that was put some stuff in the Humvee. This what do you call it? Pot. You won't know what it is. It's a Jewish food that's prepared on the Sabbath, and it's kind of like slow cooked. One of the names is chunt. It's like potatoes, eggs. It's a really, really heavy meal that a lot of people like to have it in the winter. But that pot was about that big, and I think it could feed 150 or something like that. So I think that was the second time I brought that down. This is another guy. I was talking to him, and he actually lives down the street from me. But I drove over like a little bit over an hour to give him those mattresses. That was a generator and some other stuff we brought to a tank unit. This is an interesting picture because before the war, there was a lot of infighting within the different. How did I get to 8 so quick? A lot of infighting within the different segments of society. So here, I'm taking food from ultra-Orthodox Jews that they prepared. They prepared the big pot, and this is the van. I'm taking it down. So it's got ultra-Orthodox Jews preparing this Sabbath meal for these secular soldiers, being driven by a Christian, and the connection is a Jewish Messianic soldier. The guy I showed you earlier that works in ministry. We don't have to do that. Okay, let's stop there because we've had out of time. How can you pray? I think that was one of the questions.
Yeah, what can we, 2 questions.
Yeah.
First question is, are Americans still going to Israel?
Yeah, like what we call solidarity trips. One of the reasons why I came to the States, did I say this earlier? I know, I think I was talking to somebody else. My wife wanted me out of the house, so I had to find something to do. That's kind of a joke and kind of the truth. Well, I thought, why don't I go? I did tell you this, so why don't I go to the States? After I bought the tickets, the travel agent that I work with over there says, "Hey, I got a group coming on the 22nd, again today." I thought, "No, I have to tell Robin I can't make it again." I went back and forth with Robin. "Oh, okay, this day." Yeah. So it was a small group. I had, the day before I left, I did a couple. They were from Australia. They own a travel agency, and they wanted to come. And we saw other groups that were there also kind of wanting to come. Honestly, we talked about, you said about moving here, but other than the northern border, you can pretty much see the entire country. The dangerous places are the northern border and inside Gaza, which nobody's going to go inside Gaza, and nobody's going to let you go up to the northern border. So there are people coming. I showed you one guy next to that truck that came. He came with, I think they were like 4 or 5 from their church, and they each brought like 4 suitcases of.
So that's mission teams going in.
Yeah, yeah.
But tourism, has it shut down?
Yeah, so I was supposed to have a group now.
Right.
I mean, I was offered it. They're going to be different than your normal tours. You're not going to be able to go to the Golan, I don't think, and definitely not, Tel Dan and.
But one of the ways that Israel made its money was through tourism.
Oh, sure. Israel has a very
is,
serious economic problem right now.
And this has really crippled it.
Well, also, yes, and in addition to that, on individual level, all these reservists, not all of them, but a lot of these reservists, they're not running their businesses while they're in Gaza. A lot of their wives are doing triple time, you know, they're taking care of the kids by themselves, they're doing their own job, and then they're trying to save the husband's business, or the family business that was run by the husband. It's rough. They're talking about raising some taxes on some certain things. Trying to think, today I was listening to the news and they were talking about it, but, yeah.
Well, I got a question about America sending money over there.
Yeah.
They've been giving, Ukraine
Mm.
all this money. How do
Right.
y'all feel about what we're?
Israel gets more money from the States than any other country in the world,
Okay,
and
good.
by far. Sure, we'd love to have more, but, yeah. A lot of times America gives Israel money to buy American, what is that? Yeah, thank you. Army equipment, airplanes. So the states benefits also, like, but it's a lot of money. It's in the billions. Yes, sir.
So what's your feeling, does the Israel leadership and the Israeli people have the determination, the tenacity to see this to the right conclusion as opposed to bowing to the cultural pressures?
Not cultural pressure, it's international pressure.
Okay,
International political pressure. That's the question. So on one hand, you have people say, forget the states. Don't listen to Biden. On the other hand, you gotta look at that president and say, where would we be now if it weren't for the states? You just can't hang up the phone on Biden. Or whatever president it is. I'm not singling out Biden. I like to say good and bad things about everybody. Biden was one of the first international leaders to come visit Israel. He sends, I don't know all the names, but he's sending somebody from his cabinet all the time. On the other hand, he's put pressure on Israel to I don't mind humanitarian aid, but to give gas to Gaza, which is a real problem, because gas is how Hamas, what's the word? Gets air in their tunnels. And before they had that gas, it seemed like they were a lot more eager to trade hostages, because now they can wait a lot longer than hostages can, put it like that. It's difficult because there is that desire, a very deep desire to finish this, and I think Netanyahu has told Biden several times we can't do that. We have to finish this at least as much as we can. I know there was it Blinken has been over there a lot, that's who I was thinking. They put pressure to Israel to move to what they call stage 2. So Israel in English said, yes, we're moving to stage 2. But you saw on the ground, like, it's the same. Like, so they kind of said in English, yeah, we're going to do it. And then they kind of kept doing what they were doing. It's going to be interesting. It's really hard for me to think. I saw a couple of things today. One, I saw the Hamas leader said, because Israel rejected, Hamas said, we'll give you the soldiers back, the captives back, but the war's over, you withdraw, and I think there was another term, and it was like, no way, man, you want us to act like this, none of this ever happened. And basically what that also means is that Israel can't send the people back to live where they were living, because it's not, under the current situation, it's not safe. Right now it's safe because there's soldiers in there, but when they remove, one of the first things they talked about was that there's going to have to be a much larger kind of no man's land in between Gaza and Israel. That's so to answer your question. No, I can't answer that question because I don't know. It's very difficult. It's very, because you can't stand up to the states forever, especially when the states is basically vetoing all these decisions in the UN Security Council or other councils that they, against Israel, and the states is saving our back every time. So you gotta kind of listen to Uncle Sam a little bit, even when you don't want to. That's our reality. You guys don't have that. You make, kind of do what you want.
I have a question. How do you live there?
By you guys, I mean the states, I don't mean,
Yeah.
yes,
How
ma'am.
do you live there? How do you live like this? How do you live knowing that there could be rockets, that your children go to school?
Look, if I lived somewhere around Gaza, it would be much, much, much more difficult. We've had sirens, I think 7 times since the beginning of the war. Compare that to Gaza, around Gaza, compare that to Tel Aviv even, that we have WhatsApp groups in our family and stuff, and we say, oh, we had a siren today. And then one of the members of the family that's in Tel Aviv was like, oh, that's so cute, like, you poor baby. And we had 7, 2 days ago. So where I live is much calmer. I'm on our, what did I call it? I translated the first response team, and we go through different scenarios about how, we're not so worried about the rockets coming, but we are concerned if a van came full of terrorists or something. So it's probably unlikely, but one of the things there's an expression that has started in the States. It's called "You're thinking like it's October 6th." It started in Israel. So all the time you're thinking like it's October 6th. So that's difficult because you can't say it's ridiculous anymore. You can't say that will never happen.
And we don't have that here. I mean, we've had, 9/11, we've had problems like that, but it
Yep.
just seems like, the Palestinians they just kind of went and poked the bear.
Absolutely.
And they're just backing up, and they backed up, and then they're back at home.
Went back up. They went down on the ground.
Yeah.
They have fighters that are fighting, but their leadership is in Qatar, where they live, and they're multi-billionaires. But their leadership in Gaza is underground, and it's difficult to get in there because it's like a maze. And you hear some of the captives that made it out, and they said when they were led in there, it's not like you just go down one thing and you follow the thing. You go down, you take a left here, then you take the second right, and then the third left, and then you go down another. It's crazy, and then some of that stuff has explosives. So the army is very, very careful about sending soldiers in there, and when they have to, the soldiers die because you're going into their world, and they know where the explosives are and when you're coming. And they want, like I said earlier, they want their civilian population to die so that international pressure will mount on Israel and cause Israel to stop. And I think one of the reasons why they committed so many atrocities is because the rockets weren't working anymore. Because Iron Dome pretty much stopped that, and Israel became, the rockets didn't face us much anymore.
What's to prevent them from going your area, or Hezbollah going?
Well, Hezbollah's a bit further away in the north. No, it would take them a while. They would have to come through. I visited a friend that lives up in the north, and he was telling me, I was like, but they're going to go through some other villages before they get to you. He said, Adam, all those villages have been evacuated. And he said there's actually it's not a road, but it was when the British mandate was in the Middle East, when the Brits ruled after World War I, they ran a pipe from Iraq to Haifa Bay and pumped oil, and then it was brought from ships in Haifa to England. And so there's still some of that area. He said, Adam, if they could come right down this, they know about it. He said they could come right down this area, and we're like, because all these other villages have been evacuated, we'd be like the first. So there's definitely, and Israel for a number of years has had a lot more respect for Hezbollah than they have Hamas. They know Hezbollah is much better trained, much better equipped, and so the threat, again, October 6th, the threat is a lot more serious from Hezbollah than we thought it was from Hamas. How do you live there? It's where when God calls you to a place and you know that you're in that place. Like I love visiting the States, but it's not my home anymore. That God called me there.
So how can we help?
You can pray. I pray Psalms 122, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. I expand that. I pray for the peace of Israel. I pray for the peace of the northern border. I pray that God would move Hezbollah off the northern border. And there's actually a UN decision actually in favor of Israel for, that doesn't happen very much, that Hezbollah is not supposed to be in that area. But Israel got, lax, thank you, that's what I was, and was letting them come in, and even up to the fence. So, want them to push back. I pray that they wouldn't be able to shoot rockets and drones into Israel. And in the southern border, in Gaza, I pray that the captives would be returned. There's a lot of scripture about returning captives, even that is repeated in the Gospels from Isaiah 61. I pray that God would protect the soldiers and guide them, and then I pray for their leadership, and I pray for the leadership of the country. That's kind of my go-to prayer about sometimes I pray for specific families, like Biba's family with the little kids. There are, people that have brought over equipment. That's something you want to do. I could put you in touch with the right people. I have a number of organizations that I work for. So if somebody wanted to donate to one of those, either to the youth ministry. There's also an organization that helps me do what I do with the delivery stuff.
Do you have anything written that tells us how we could?
I have websites I can give you. I think they're here.
If you'll send those to me,
Oh, great. That
I
would be great.
will get all of that out.
Yeah, so this is Netiva is one of them. You have to be careful. Don't go looking for yourself because there's other organizations with a similar name. They're good too, but it's not the same one.
Yeah, wait until I send this to you. That was my big concern because there's all kinds of stuff out
Where's
there.
another one? I had another one here for. I'm on the board. The one that helps me. That's fun. Oh, there it is. JerusalemCornerstone.org. I'm on their board, and they've helped me a little bit with delivering stuff. But yeah, I'll be glad to give you that information.
Is the old city still standing though?
Of course. I tell you, there are some suicide, terrorist attacks. And one of the sadder stories is there was she was American actually, she was from Atlanta. And she immigrated to Israel, serving in the army. She actually lived near Gaza, grabbed her M16 that day when they came and helped fight off terrorists coming into where she lived. But she served in the border police in Jerusalem. And I think that even it was a week or two after October 7th, she was killed in Jerusalem. And what happens is she's called a lone soldier because she immigrated by herself. She was a Jewish girl, immigrated to Israel, served in the army. And so when a lone soldier dies, masses show up to their funeral. Because it's kind of the idea like, don't let this family think that we don't care. Don't let this girl who has no family in Israel be buried alone. So I've never been to one of those. And because she was from Atlanta, I kind of felt a little connection there. So I went. I don't know how many thousands of people were there. At one point I was like, okay, I'm here, I can go. I was like, I don't need to stay for the whole thing. There's enough people here. Nobody's gonna notice that I'm gone. I don't know, why did I take that? What was your question?
If it doesn't, how do you live there?
No, what you just asked. Jerusalem. So there have been some attacks against police and stuff, mostly in some Israelis.
So, Ed, I'm gonna call on you if that's okay. Ed is not only a retired Methodist minister, but he is also retired military. And so if he will, I'd love for him to pray tonight. Is that okay?
You want the mic? Or you got a preacher's voice.
He's got a military voice.
Lord, I will give you thanks for sending Adam to give us some new insight, some personal insight but obviously parts were very